place in chapter 223. Uraume is asking the golden question about Yuji, the one we've been asking since chapter 1. Who is Yuji Itadori? And I love that even the editor is telling Sukuna to answer this question, like even he's been waiting for this shit. Sukuna just gives us most of the rundown casually. You'd think that this would be some earth-shattering I am your father moment revealed by a resurrected Kenjaku, but nah. Sukuna just explains that Yuji Itadori is the creation of Kenjaku, but as for the body he inhabits, he has no clue. Uraume then brings up Yuji's fight with Sukuna from when Sukuna left his body, saying that she was able to feel some similarity between the two, and even then, this power that she's felt isn't just from whatever Sukuna left in Yuji's body after splitting from him. It was something completely different, something that makes Yuji more than just a prison. Sukuna says, well, of course, Kenjaku wouldn't make a child without reason. It's likely that Yuji is the result of him getting it on in Kaori's body with Jin Itadori, the man who is the reincarnation of Sukuna's other half, and the man who shares the same soul with Sukuna. Sukuna breaks this down, saying that when he was about to pass away from starving to death in the womb, he ate the other half of himself that was in the womb with him. I don't know if this is going to be relevant, but this tells us that either Sukuna's mother was in poverty and unable to afford food, or that she was starving her children to get rid of them. I'm unsure as to which, but I'd assume the former. Uraume basically questions his other half existing, and he goes on to explain how he rejected the fate of being born a twin. And by consuming this other half's body, its soul was left to wander until it reached Kenjaku. Sukuna would then go on to point out that Yuji is naturally a player in the Culling game due to having a finger of Sukuna within his body, and that this was necessary to ensure his strength as a host. So this little detail goes all the way back to Kenjaku because it's insinuating that Kenjaku did make Yuji eat that finger or set things up in that way to happen one way or another. Why? Well, if Yuji's participation in the Culling game was to ensure Yuji's strength as a host such as Sukuna implies, it's probably because Kenjaku wants Yuji to become stronger himself. It's strange, but that's how I'm going to interpret it. This could also be why Kenjaku has set the deadlock rules of everybody needs to be eliminated, including Yuji, to manifest a merger, because it will put Yuji under conditions that forces him to grow even more, as we're about to see. Uraume then puts the final piece together. If that's the case, doesn't this mean that Yuji's potential is equivalent to Lord Sukuna's himself? After this, the stage is set for the climax. Yuji and Sukuna prepare to enter close combat. Sukuna reaches toward Yuji's face, but Yuji pushes his right hand outward, parrying Sukuna, coupling that with his open left palm to push Sukuna's arm even further, and then he rolls his right fist after parrying into another black flash. Sukuna reaches in the act, and Yuji punches his hand, causing another black flash. The two look at each other for a bit. Yuji's locked in, and Sukuna's smirk isn't there anymore. After all this time, you really love to see it. Next thing we see is Yuji just flying out of a building. So that means Sukuna's probably on him bad, but he touches his pole and we see scissor marks surrounding it, and Sukuna's like, so he can actually use it? After Sukuna points out that Yuji has activated this technique, we get an explanation. Yuji at the moment has two cursed techniques. First is blood manipulation after consuming the death painting wounds, 4 to 9, and in this awakened state that he's in due to the black flashes that he's landing, this has given him access to Sukuna's shrine. Here, we see the pole finally clean cut by what seems to be Yuji's own version of cleave, and I'll explain this a bit later on. He grabs that same pole and hurls it towards Sukuna as a cover, with Sukuna cutting it into shreds with his foot, but Yuji here uses this opportunity to reach his hand through the debris and grab Sukuna's foot midair. He goes in for a punch as he holds on to Sukuna, and Sukuna responds by sending a barrage of dismantles, but to no avail. Yuji has decided to continue his punch through the rain of slashes and lands another black flash. Sukuna backs up and he begins to think about Yuji's own version of Shrine and how it's different due to the era and Yuji's mentality, but he was able to see that the energy input of this technique is quite weak, so the biggest problem is Yuji's keen sense currently. So yeah, Yuji does seem to have his own version of Sukuna's slashing abilities, and is way more modernized as it seemed to be able to do rotational clean cuts. I think Yuji probably associates cutting with using scissors in school, whereas Sukuna associates cutting with knives and blades, as they probably weren't using scissors back in the Heian era. Sukuna says that the input to the technique is weak as well, so Yuji more than likely isn't using this technique as an offensive move, but more so utility. But this just lets him use way less cursed energy than he would need if he had Sukuna's type of cleave. We move on to a flashback of Ino with Gojo and the rest before his fight with Sukuna. He's asking if he's able to use Nanami's cursed tool, and they're like, go for it. Why are you even asking? And Ino's thinking that they've known him for longer than anybody else, but they're just saying, we don't know him like that for real, bro. You good, just take the weapon. Anyway, you're the one that Nanami trusted the most. And as we get out of this lame ass flashback, we see Ino preparing something, the one hope he's ever had to be relevant, the dragon. As Sukuna hears this, it crashes him into a railing, but Sukuna is able to just instantly cut it up. Ino then charges up to swing Nanami's blade on Sukuna, but he just parries it by stepping on it and stares down at Ino, like, you don't belong here, Gabe. But Ino's well aware of this. He was only allowing our boy to use another Black Flash. Sukuna begins to complain and whine about Yuji just using it willy-nilly, and he asks if he's really going to keep up this combo on him. And as Sukuna flies through a window into a building, we see that Ino saying, damn, he's out of options at this point, and he apologizes for failing Nanami. We come back to Sukuna and Yuji, and Sukuna puts his hand on the ground and activates Cleave as Yuji drops down to follow up. Using the debris from Cleave as a smokescreen, Sukuna attempts to punch Yuji through it. But Yuji catches his big plastic man-ass arm and sends him flying into a wall with another punch, and Sukuna's just panicking at this point. You can see it on his face as he says that nothing is getting to Yuji. He then sends more dismantles at his face, but Yuji's on demon time. It doesn't even phase him. This allows him to land another Black Flash, but it was all for naught, as Sukuna finally gets his hands on Yuji's face and nope. Even a direct cleave to the head couldn't do the job. As long as there's only pain, Yuji Itadori will not stop. Black Flash. Sukuna begins to lose his composure and screams "you brat" at the top of his lungs. And then we see Nanami's blade smack Sukuna in the face. It throws him off balance one last time as we see Yuji preparing a Black Flash under him. And Ino on the side says, I did a great job considering the kind of person I am, huh? Mess him up, Yuji. And boom.
Jermaine is typically on the road for months at a time. I like to make him feel comfortable. I love Downy because it makes the sheets smell so fresh all week.
Fresh sheets for 7 nights.
These sheets smell like home.
Downy.
I want to learn how to bicycle kick, break down how to do it, push off your kicking.
Did a great job considering the kind of person I am, huh? Mess him up, Yuji. And boom. Black Flash. We continue the fight between Itadori and Sukuna, with Hakari still nowhere to be seen. And it said that when Gojo unleashed his 2 Black Flashes on Sukuna, he was able to establish a unique reverse curse technique relay in his awakened state. What set this relay apart was the operation and burden of the technique being dispersed throughout different parts of his own brain. With this quote, I guess we can assume that the awakened state is the 120% that comes out after the Black Flash. I do think this is why Gege didn't tell us Gojo was in an awakened state as well against Sukuna until now, just to subvert our expectations. This also goes back to Mahito, where he was like, thanks to the Black Flash, I've seen my true nature, and he has that whole transformation. As the prelude of this chapter continues, it's stated that Sukuna should also be able to do the same currently, regenerating his hands and destroying the rest of Jujutsu High with relative ease, or at least under normal circumstances he would've. But due to Yuji striking 7 Black Flashes directly at the boundary between Sukuna and Megami's souls, Sukuna was not allowed to regain his reverse curse technique. Yuji was completely in the zone to be aiming like that. People say that Yuji landed 8 Black Flashes, so why does it say 7? I believe it's one of the Black Flashes that Yuji landed was a parry or a block or just a hand slap rather than a direct strike in the previous chapter. Just a guess though. We then see Miguel and LaRue escaping the fight. They've served their purpose, so they're headed back home. Miguel coming out of this without a scratch is still crazy to me, but anyways, he tells LaRue that he did great. And then Miguel looks in the distance to see this massive spike of curse energy just welling in the distance. And he's like, you've got to be kidding me. So here we see Sukuna's new domain. With it being said, the king's domain traveling along with the sparks of black has returned to its master. So we finally get confirmation as to what exactly Sukuna's Black Flashes were bringing back. I thought it was just regular output, but I was wrong. Gege actually went and gave him the domain expansion back. However, in the state that Sukuna is in, with the appearance of his domain, we know that what's going on is a little bit different than usual, but we'll get into that in a few. And I also have to say, oh my lord does it look fire. It does seem to resemble Megami's incomplete domain a little bit with that ribcage bone-like thing going on. It looks weird, but I think this is one of those designs that Gege maybe thought of halfway through Jujutsu Kaisen or something, but he couldn't since he had already established Sukuna's domain, or at least we thought. It's explained that by changing his hand signs and utilizing a part of the brain that wasn't affected by Gojo's infinite void, Sukuna was able to use his curse techniques alongside his barrier techniques. Within all of his impromptu binding vows and all of the uncertainties of this battle he's been dealing with, him landing his black flashes allowed his domain expansion to return with no loss in either output or range. A lot of people have been bringing up the binding